right, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Educators Podcast. I am Mr. Burden, aka Aaron, and with me are two of my favorite people on the planet, Mr. and Mrs. Talbott, Ronnie Talbott and Michelle Talbott. You might recognize Ronnie from a small little reality show series from a long time ago. I'm not even sure is it still on the air. Big Brother, I think it was. And you also, if you are in the 7th grade hallway at Jackson Middle School?
Yes.
The Jackson Middle School, you might know him as the source of fun in the 7th grade hallway.
It's
from
true.
Mr. Talbott here. And of course, Mrs. Talbott is, I understand, probably not only one of the coolest people in Jackson Middle School, but also she is the best photographer, I understand. From because I was checking out the comments in recently when I do want to talk about the video team there, the recognition, but apparently you could have a second career as a professional photographer with those angles. Well, first of all, thank you both for joining and doing the joint podcast show, and thank you, congratulations on your video team. With the recognition. Now, did they win the thing we were voting on, or
what it is there's here? I didn't even know this is my first. This was our first year ever doing this, believe it or not. Here in West Virginia, we have a competition called it highlights manufacturing in our state, and it asks teachers to help students explore what manufacturing means to our state. How have we been innovative in the realm of manufacturing? And we were paired with Simons & Windows, which is a long established company here in West Virginia. They sell windows all throughout the United States.
Big time.
Actually, Florida is their number one customer. They send the most windows to Florida.
They probably need them. Every hurricane comes through.
Yes. And actually, it's funny. That's one of the windows we featured in our video. But so we toured the manufacturing facility. We spoke to the employees and the executives at the plant, and the kids. Cool. Miss George and myself, we were their advisors, so we kind of gave them tips and kind of kept them going in good, focused, but they did all the work entirely on their own. And so in the north central region of West Virginia, we won the whole thing.
Woo!
I know.
Congratulations.
First year ever doing it.
That is awesome. And because of that, I'm awarding both of you we're jeans.
Yes,
we're jeans the rest of the year. You don't have to worry about looking professional.
Yes.
No, but that's fantastic. I bet that was an awesome experience for the team.
It was.
And it's different when you're like running a club more as a mentor because like as a teacher, you're teaching. Whereas mentor, it's them. It's their club, right?
Yes. Oh yeah. That was the stressful thing is, we've done other extracurriculars in the past, but you always, like you just said, it's them. When you're doing the extracurriculars, you want to provide the guidance that they need, but at the end of the day, you want them to succeed on their own. They want them to be able to say, hey, I did this. And that's why it blows me away how us being recognized, these kids really put their heart and soul in that. They really did.
And to get recognized like that in front of like the school board, that's a tremendous. That's something they'll remember. And of course, they had the coolest teacher in 7th grade helping them out with that. And kind of to go into that, the opportunities that kids have now versus when we were in school seem to be growing. But then I don't know if it's like, is it still a struggle to get kids into the more STEM, or I guess now is it STEAM now? Or I've heard it's now STREAM. They've added reading, but I don't know.
Well, we still say STEAM here.
Yeah,
so maybe
STEAM.
we're behind the times.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm cool with the A. I think we're pushing it when we go R. I said, okay, Art. Now we're pretty much covering everything at school.
Right.
But it's one of the things I found running robotics is when I was the mentor for the robotics club. Is the students, like the assumption that just put all the gifted kids in robotics was a fallacy, because I found
Mhm.
sometimes it was like, a lot of times the students that weren't identified as gifted, and we can talk about that concept also, weren't the ones that had the most success. It was the ones that like are used to the struggle, used to figuring things out, found the
Mhm.
most success. Have you kind of seen that in your extra and just in general in the classroom too?
Well, I mean, you can talk about speech and debate. The kids
Yeah.
that she's so smart. She always said that you got to find that student's why. And
Yes.
like you said, you always go to the quote unquote gifted students, but they have their why. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
They do.
But like in speech and debate, the sheer number of kids, and we have some kids on the video team like this, that it's their why. It's what
Mhm.
gets them to school, keeps them focused and
Yeah,
interested.
most
Get-
definitely.
Getting that buy-in is so important. I think it's tremendous. And I imagine on debate, they find that issue that's a hot button for them, and so they
Yeah.
get really passionate about finding generating a good argument.
Mhm.
Well, also, it has a lot to do with how it's taught,
Yes.
because oftentimes we gatekeep, not even trying to,
Yeah.
by aiming it towards the gifted children.
Mhm.
When in actuality, if you just put it in terms where anyone can get it, you might hook some child in who that wasn't their path at all. When I first started coaching, I had a young boy who, I mean, he was on the path to dropping out of high school because he just hadn't found his why.
Mhm.
And I somehow I managed to interest him and help him find his why and teach debate, so it was actually accessible for him to begin to start tackling the activity. And he went on in law school, and now he's a lawyer.
Think about that moment. Here,
Yeah.
he's a lawyer now.
Yeah.
That one moment, he's thinking about there's nothing for me. Like struggling to find their identity, and then that one opportunity
Mhm.
turns them around. That's
Right.
such a cool story, and
Thank you.
and that's why I get excited about whenever there's a new club or a new group. I know that there is a point where some parents, they get super hyper, like want to enroll their kid in everything.
Mhm.
Right.
But a lot of time when the kids find they find that thing that they're passionate about, that's so tremendous.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
The same
Yes.
thing in the classroom. How has incorporating technology, like today's technology, and we can talk about some of the negatives too, like social media, but how has incorporating today's technology really made teaching fun and engaging with your students?
Well, okay, so I teach special education at the middle school, right? And I'm the
Mhm.
7th grade special education teacher. Well, when I do pull out math, we've had all of our kids have iPads, one-to-one iPad. Every kid in our school, everyone.
Got it.
So I'm able to use apps that allow differentiation when I talk about math. So like
Awesome.
fractions and stuff like
Oh.
that. It's just because, and I'm going to nerd out here. I'm so passionate about
Please.
this.
Don't
Because-
nerd out. This is not a nerd podcast. Ignore the Star Wars behind me.
But when we were in school, math was it was just numbers on paper. That's it,
Yeah.
and they only taught it one way, and either you got it or you didn't. And now I just really truly do believe, while not everyone will be the best math student, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we have to be realistic. I think everyone can be successful in learning when it comes to math. We just got to find, how do we get that to happen?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and my students, I've had several of them say, "Hey, I wasn't really a math kid," but they've gone up. They've filled in some of those learning gaps because of things like the apps and showing visual representation of fractions and allowing. And I actually applied for a grant and was picked for math physical manipulatives for the whole
Nice.
school.
Another congratulations. More genes. We're gonna exhaust our genes pass bank here in just a little bit. No, but that's awesome. And getting grants for stuff like that, and manipulatives are so important in teaching. Sometimes not just math, but like even in like word study with the push-its and whatnot. That's fantastic.
Yes.
So what kind of cool stuff are you going to buy with that grant?
Oh, we already got it at the school. I'm already using it. I got fraction tiles. I got 3D geometry models for doing volume and surface area, percentage boards so that they can actually visually look at percentages.
That's so cool.
I mean, just all kinds of cool things like that. And it really makes a difference. And I love when you are going over a concept and the kid's like, it's really not making sense to me. And then you say, well, look at this. And you get out the base 10 blocks or whatever you may have, and you show them and they're like, oh, that's something makes sense to me. I mean, that stuff wasn't there when we were in school.
No.
Base 10 blocks made teaching regrouping so much easier. We used to call them chicken nuggets, pretzel rides, and waffles. Because we would only in third grade we'd only go up to in third grade we actually went to 1,000, but then we had the big cubes, and then we get to that. But it was it's getting that tangible understanding versus jumping right to numbers on paper.
Yep,
I think that's tremendous. What do you feel like though that are we pacing well with our kids? Are we asking too much of them, not enough, or how do you feel we're addressing students' growth?
Well, I feel like COVID has really impacted student learning. There's a major gap that we have to currently overcome to even get kids back to where they need to be, both behavior wise and on grade level.
Yeah. Exactly. The COVID babies. I mean, we almost might call them, that might be their, term, their Gen X term or whatever, the COVID babies. We had the kids that were shut down during kindergarten became my third grade kids. And it's like, you're right. Not just the learning gaps, not just the academic gaps, but the coping mechanism gaps.
Yes.
Do you guys see a lot of that?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. I always say, working in special education, especially behaviors are my bread and butter. That seems to be the thing I deal with the most.
Yeah.
But it's even beyond the kids that I have in my classes. It's just all the kids. We talk all the time about how we see a lot of social emotional gaps with the kids where they don't want. This is going to make it sound so elementary, but I mean, you take away 3 years ago, these 8th graders were in 5th grade. So they were in elementary 3 years ago,
Yeah.
But they don't like it when unkind things are said toward them or about them, but then they'll turn around and say unkind things about someone else. And when you have that discussion with them that, hey, you just expressed, you didn't like that this was said, but you kind of did the same thing. What's going on there? And they really, because of COVID and the online classes, and she led a professional development thing not too long ago in our district where she talked about this. It's like they didn't have those formative years where they realized, oh, there are consequences to the things I say and do in terms of social interaction. Because think about that. They could just turn the phone off. They could just turn the Teams meeting off.
Right.
They could just turn the iPad off. Right. And it was over to them at that point in time. But now they're back in the classroom full time and have been. And so when these things happen, they don't have anywhere to go. They see how this is affecting other people.
Exactly. And their primary social interaction may have been purely online for a lot, and there's positives to social media, but also that it can be, as we all know, can be a cesspool sometimes. And
Absolutely.
What did you just post the other day that I shared that's so true?
Yeah, I think
about
it was on Facebook,
students.
right?
Right. About the when we were in school, we could just go home and decompress from what happened at school. Now, because, you do a TikTok about it, you do, all the social media out there where they'll just replay your most embarrassing moment all year. It's not just going to quickly be forgotten because of social media like TikTok.
Yeah, it's like Big Brother, but it's for everybody.
Yeah,
exactly.
here we go. This is it. It says, imagine something embarrassing happened to you at school
Yes.
when you were in the 7th grade. Everyone laughed and it was awful and you were mortified. Then a few weeks passed and everyone found new things to laugh about and they moved on. You didn't forget how embarrassed you were, but you could move on too. Now imagine you did something embarrassing in 7th grade and everyone laughed at it and it was awful, but someone also caught it on Snapchat and turned it into a meme and a TikTok, and everyone in school saw it and took the screenshot of it and spread it further, and you couldn't even, and people were still resharing it for months. Yeah, because then the internet's forever.
Yes.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
It's written in ink.
Yep. And there you are. You're the I don't know, you're the staple cry kid or something, you know, you're whatever happened.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
I know comedian Jamie Foxx said once on a podcast that his kids, when he shows a picture, when they met Michael Jordan, they didn't recognize him for basketball. They said, "Oh, you're the crybaby face guy." You know, from that one meme where he's crying all the time.
Oh.
Hey, you're the cry man. And so
even he's not immune to it.
Right.
do you feel like do you feel like some kids are ready for social media, or what kind of restrictions should there be, or should there be, is it more just purely the parents, acumen at that point?
Well, I think this is the nature of kids. Of course, you're always going to have some kids that are more mature than other kids in terms of their emotional, ability. And of course, our instinct is to say, okay, well, they can handle it. But I mean, they're still kids. They're still kids.
Yeah.
And you don't know how things could affect them, however secure they may seem. Hey, Ben. Ben's coming in here.
Hey, Ben. 6-year-old Ben.
Ben, you want to come say hi to everyone? Yeah.
Is it camera?
Hey, Ben.
Say hi.
Hi, Ben.
See him? There's Aaron.
Is he Thor? Is that Ben or is that Thor?
Oh, he's Thor.
Yeah, he's Thor.
Yeah, he's wearing his Thor hoodie.
Very cool. Hi, Thor.
Play Roblox.
He's playing Roblox.
Roblox are cool. I like Minecraft myself, but Roblox are pretty
He
cool
likes
too.
You like Minecraft? Yeah.
Minecraft's pretty awesome too.
All right, go play. He's going back to play. But, I think the kids, it seems like maybe they can handle it. And I'm sure there are some kids who can.
Yeah.
But in general, I'm so hesitant. And it's mainly because, like you said, Big Brother has shaped my perception of social media so much.
I can imagine.
And it's funny enough that it's been a real chance to talk to kids about social media, because they ask me about my experience, and it's kind of a teachable moment to say,
yeah, definitely,
there are negatives that maybe you're not aware, because they all say this, Aaron, I want to be famous. I want to be famous. I want to be famous.
Yes. I want to be a TikTok influencer when I grow up.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
And I tell them that there are far more downsides to that aspect than there are positives. And I mean, because you got to be honest with them, right?
Yep. And 24/7. I mean,
Yes.
It's like, do you want to be known as Ronnie the Rat?
Well, I do.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, that's right. Or Darth Ronnie T is more like it.
Yes.
But you're also an adult.
Exactly. I was an adult when I was on there, so I was ready.
Right.
I mean, even though I wasn't ready, mentally, I was fully developed and ready.
You could handle it better than a 12-year-old.
Yes,
exactly.
Who's mortified because they get a bloody nose in class and now they're nosebleed kid.
Right.
Or something like that.
Right.
And so many kids, they don't have that filter because they are kids, that they don't is this a good idea to film this and post this and put this out there? Instead, like, yes, boom, and it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they just do it. They're so impulsive in that sense.
This will get likes. This will get famous.
Yes.
And that's kind of like the kid, you know, the kid in the classroom that craves attention, so they get the negative attention. If you look at social media, what gets the most likes? The controversy.
Yep.
You know,
exactly.
like, you know, that's, I mean, not, you don't have to get political, but, you know, like, I think part of like Trump and them, it's like the controversy gets the likes, gets the interactions, gets
the attention,
the retweets, and look at a lot of those TikTok trends. What is it? The lick the ice cream trend, or all these crazy things that they get on there. So that kind of stuff is encouraged. And I don't know if have you seen where, like, also in just the general communication, that kids are kind of talking more like they're on social media.
Yeah, they use the lingo, and they, things like that. Yes.
Yes, Thor, son of Darth Ronnie T and Lady Michelle. How fares Asgard this day?
He's so ornery. Yeah, I mean, they do. It's like they don't. Almost sometimes I think they can't distinguish. Well, I don't want to say can't, but would prefer not to distinguish between an online life. And,
they struggle with the balance.
Yes.
When in elementary, we used to. I used to refer to going out for recess as, all right, time for us to go touch grass. You got to go touch some grass, and the kids laughed at that. But that's like, I think that incorporating that with kids is so important. Kids get nowadays a lot of kids, they go home and they just log in rather than all right. When I would go home, it was like, all right, I'm on my bike. I'll see you when the lights come on, when the street lights come on.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I do feel like that there were some aspects of virtual teaching that were positive, but like there was so much of the social, emotional aspect was missing. Would you agree there?
Oh, definitely, 100%. And it's boy, as teachers, we talk about other people's children a lot because that's who we teach, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't even take COVID really hurt our own son.
Yeah.
Immensely, because he was almost 3 when that all really hit,
Yeah.
And because of that, he was a very, very late talker, and he's now since then has been diagnosed as being on the spectrum. But those formative years where the early intervention is so key, we missed out on that because since we shut down for COVID, we couldn't get him into a speech therapist. We couldn't get him into a doctor to be assessed.
Yeah.
They were, and you do in elementary, this as well as I do. Kids learn more about social interaction just by playing.
Yeah.
Just by interacting. Just you put them in there and let them, and that's how they learn a lot of talking. They learn better from learning, appropriate peers than adults. And he missed out on all of that. So that undoubtedly hurt him when it came to learning to talk. And he's doing very well now, but we're still struggling to overcome a lot of those gaps. So, and think about this. We say this all the time. He is a child whose both parents are teachers and know what they're doing with this. How many kids are falling through the gaps?
Exactly. How many kids maybe there's a single parent that's working so much that they or just simply like, and not in a negative, not in a shame on you sense, but just don't know. Like there's an ignorance, like they don't know what to do. That's why a lot of times, like in IEP meetings, I'll really give the parents a lot of grains of salt, because a lot of times I get these IEP meetings can get heated, but I understand where the parents a lot of times are coming from. Deep down, they're trying to fight for their kid.
Yes,
a lot of times, they're scared that the institution is going to take advantage of them, and I do get that. I feel like that. Do you feel like there's enough support nowadays, or maybe specifically in your school district, for students with special needs? And kind of to dovetail that, do you feel like we're accurately addressing the last 3 years, or do you think we're kind of acting like, all right, back to normal and just kind of just ignore those last 3 years?
Tag, am I it?
I think I think we're trying to do our very best with the
Yeah.
situation that we've been handed, which I hate to use this word, but it was unprecedented. I mean, we didn't have any experience to draw off of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're really trying our best to give the social, the mental health care, the, academic support that we can. But I don't think that we were prepared for such a situation.
Yeah. Now, I think, and again, we've only ever worked in the district we've always worked in.
Yeah.
I think we have great support for students with special needs here. I will tell you, as you know, the data is coming out. We're only seeing more and more incidences of students with special needs and more IEPs. And, so there's definitely an increasing need for even more support, even though it's really good as is. But I totally related to what you said, Aaron, about, the grains of salt, because and what the parents just don't know. Because again, we're both teachers and I'm a special education teacher. But even when our son was diagnosed, I struggled with wearing two different hats, the special education teacher hat, the dad hat. And, and no two kids are ever the same. Every student is different and has different needs. But I struggled with trying to figure out, well, how would I teach my son? And so it was hard for me to reconcile. And here she's taught for 15th year. And she didn't even know how to navigate the IEP, that whole process of getting his first IEP. So, but I did, but I kept thinking, imagine how many parents that it's a lot of information being thrown at a parent. It's a lot. And that's why anyone's watching or listening, just remember, here in West Virginia, we have, I'm sure every state has them, parental advocates that if you can get to help you, they're just there to help you explain things. If there's some, misunderstandings. By misunderstandings, I just mean literally you're not sure what they're saying, or or you're having issues reading, because an IEP is very formal when you look at it. And that can be overwhelming the first time you see that. So there are parental advocates out there that can help you sift through that even more, and maybe help you think of questions you didn't even know you need to ask.
Absolutely. And I almost want to add to that too, I think, and that sometimes that there's that fear that the education administration is going to try to take advantage. Now, I don't think that's mostly the case. There are cases where I've seen that. I mean, I've been in some IEP meetings where I'm hearing some stuff from some of the other folks, but for the most part, teachers want your kid to succeed. They didn't get into this business because they want to just boss kids around and yell at them. They're in this business because they want to help your child. So they're usually, when they're in the IEP meeting with you, their recommendations come from not only, they likely have a bachelor's or master's degree in education. They also have the teaching experience there, and they've got the anecdotes. They see your kid every day. They're likely the best source. They're an advocate as well for your child's growth. And I think a lot of times that gets forgotten, or that kind of gets blurred when you're going in. You've got this like crazy document that's longer than a lease, that you have to go through and figure out. It's tremendous when you get a team that's that takes the time to explain stuff. I've had some assistant principals that they were teachers before, and they took the time to go through each section and explain in more easier terms what those things mean.
That's what I do in my meetings, isn't it? Because she's been a gen ed teacher for some of my students that I've had, and that maybe this is a good thing if you ask me. I tend to overcompensate and err on the side of caution and over explain things, because I think I always approach everything from the angle of, if it were my child, what would I want done? I treat every child like they are my child, and I advocate for them the same way I would want anyone to advocate for Ben. You know what I mean? So,
absolutely. Yeah, that's a great perspective to have. I mean, and Deb and I we can't have kids, so but every year I get 20 to 25 kids, every year. So it's like
yes.
they're my kids. I really
are.
feel like it. And you'll notice I'm much grayer than when we last met in person. That's because I'm running into these adults, and then they go, "Hi, Mr. Burden," and I go, "CJ, what?" This the 6'4", baseball star comes walking in. And he's like, "Hi, Mr. Burden. Remember me in 3rd grade?" And I was like, "Wait, CJ? You mean little CJ?" Yeah, making me feel like an old man.
Yes.
Do you feel like do you feel like, and first question is, do you have like self-contained students versus inclusion? Is it different in middle school or in your district? And are there some students that require so many services that maybe the public school setting isn't appropriate, or where do you guys stand on that?
Well, we don't have any students that I would say the school's not the appropriate place for them. I think that's not the case with any of them.
Right.
Now in middle school, we have inclusion classes, where as you know, it's the general education setting completely. It's just someone such as myself, special education teacher, will be in there kind of co-teaching in a sense.
Gotcha.
To help it out. But I also do what are called pull-out classes, which they're not self-contained as in their whole day. It's a much smaller class size. That's really the best. Wouldn't you agree? It's the best way to think about it. Maybe 10 to 12 kids max will be in the room. So and like I do math and English like that.
Very nice. I'm a huge proponent of smaller class sizes. Small group is my most effective way of teaching. And it's so funny because when I'm sure just like you guys, when I was going through school, it was basically lecture, regurgitate, regurgitate, take a nap. But whereas like I would do, like, my whole group lessons are maybe 15 minutes, unless it's a demonstration of something. And then usually it's like we're still doing stuff, because especially nowadays, kids can't sit still for more than 10 minutes.
No.
And to expect these kids to just sit like this and to constantly, like, do you feel like, or let me ask it this way. What are some things you do to compete with TikTok, Among Us, Fortnite, all these other things that are on these kids' minds when you're trying to get them excited about Jamestown and where Wacomico?
Talk about how you teach Hunger Games.
Oh, goodness. Well, it's funny that you first said like Jamestown, because in the month of October, we read The Crucible. And right, but we also talk about a lot of things. But we talk about things about how it would connect to nowadays, where, just because someone says something doesn't make it so. And a lot of times, it can go around that someone is one thing, but that doesn't make them that. We play this amazing game, whereas they're coming into the room, I give them all a slip of paper. And then they go around the room and they have to convince the class that they're a townsperson. And I tell them there's at least one witch in the room. So then they have to convince, they're a townsperson. And we've already talked about what kind of Puritan values that were in the Crucible.
Yeah.
And then finally, at the end, after everybody is, given their whole, I'm a townsperson because spiel, I have them give me names of people in the class they think who are a witch, and I write it on the board. And then we vote on one person who's the witch.
Burnt at the stake, yeah.
And then no one's a witch.
Yeah, I thought you were going there. I was like, I bet no one's a witch.
No one's a witch.
And it blows their mind every year.
Every year.
Like, no, someone had to
No,
be a witch.
right. Someone's a witch.
But I think that speaks to the universality of the Crucible and the themes that are in it,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
even when you revealed nobody was a witch,
Right.
they're like, no, someone had
Yep.
to be a witch. You're not telling me the truth.
Right.
No, I'm telling you, nobody was a witch.
Right.
Oh,
It's Salem. There's a witch.
There's such a timely exercise too, and that really that's one that'll really get kids to stop and think. Like, okay, am I looking for that confirmation bias?
Yes.
Hey,
Yes.
what, that person just winked at me. I bet they're the witch. Yeah,
Right.
that he rubbed his nose. But there's
Right.
it's the witch. That's
Right.
tremendous.
That person likes to read. That means she's a witch. Because that was one of the signs back then. The woman read, she's a witch. So
And you think about it, too, like what we know about mental health now versus not even, heck, even 50 years ago, but but even more so, like a couple hundred years ago in the 1600s, you may have like something where it may have been autism, or it may have been Tourette's, or it may have just been something small that they thought was demonic possession.
Yeah.
Or a frog living in their head or something. It's like it's tremendous how far mental health has become, mental health awareness has become.
Absolutely.
And Michelle doing things like that, I just love that you do things like that, hon, because let's be honest, a lot of kids hear the Crucible and they think, yuck. It was, even though it was written in the 50s, they think it's about the Salem witch trials. Yawn. It's not interesting, but teaching it in that way makes it so fresh and accessible and relevant, and you have so many kids remember it.
Absolutely.
Well, it's that, because it's that that aha moment that just sticks with them. And I think sometimes as teachers, we tend to forget that teaching is putting them in that disequilibrium, and then they find their way up, and then you put them in that situation. There was one of my colleagues, she does this activity where she gives they're talking about, I can't think of the guy's name. He was an abolitionist, and I want to say John Brown. Have you heard of
he
this?
Was hanged
this lesson
here in West Virginia?
Yes, he was.
This lesson they give everybody this bio of John Brown, but half the class gets this glorified, he's this true hero abolitionist. Oh, he's he helped freed slaves, such a great person, all this glowing stuff. The other half of the class talks about he's a murderer, and he's this scumbag, and he murdered this family, and he's this horrible person, and he and his two sons did this. And so then we have a discussion about John. Okay, so let's talk about John. What are some character traits of John Brown? And then they'll say, oh, he's an amazing person. He's a hero. And then you see half the class go, what? Hero? He murdered people. He blah, 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 blah. And then you find them, they get this whole thing, but it's one of those, again, confirmation bias, where you have that one group that's art. The first thing they read about him is he's this horrible person. The other group, they're reading this hero thing, and then you find out it's both two different viewpoints. That's tremendous.
Yes,
that's the type of stuff that's so. And see, you don't like. I like incorporating technology, but that's a non-technology way to really make a lesson fun.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes,
I remember for Jamestown, because it's a monotonous lesson. And you're talking about all the like we're going over statistics of the deaths, and then the one December of 16, I think it's 1609, 1610, where they went from like 100 to like 40, and so I made this I got this PowerPoint that I was using, and on the front I got a picture of them carrying a dead body out. It was an old painting, and then I photoshopped one of those kids from the I Survived the thing. You know those books always have those kids running.
Yeah.
And so I tried to make it like I Survived Jamestown, and try to make it like try to hook them. And then one of the kids raised their hand and said, "Where's that kid going? He's stuck at James. Where's he running to? He's James. If he runs out of Jamestown, the Native American's going to get him." And it's just, yeah. But that was my attempt at making Jamestown fun.
I love
how
it.
how y'all doing this point in the year? This is May 1st
Mm-hmm.
when we're recording this.
State testing next week.
Yeah,
Yes.
how's that going for you?
19 days, 18, 19 days of school left. State testing is next week. I don't know. I have a love-hate thing with state testing because it's necessary. Obviously, you need the data, right?
Yeah.
But we spend all year doing differentiation of instruction, and then all of a sudden it's like, nope, everyone does exactly the same thing.
Yeah. I always think it's funny because like the first like quarter one, it's you getting to know everybody and you've got all these great things. Quarter two, it's refinement. You're doing all these, we're gonna focus on this thing. And then after quarter two, at mid semester, the second semester starts, it's like, all right, remediation for the test, testing strategies, slash the trash. We start all of a sudden it's like we're pulling 12 kids here. And how do you like? Do you think that the stakes of state testing is too high?
I think maybe in some ways, but I think in the ways that I would say the stakes are too high, I think they're self-imposed stakes. Does that make sense? Because the kids, they just think it's going to decide their whole life.
Yeah.
The kids I've spoken with, and I tell them you should always try to do your best, but remember, a score does not define you.
Yeah.
Right.
Amen.
One score
Right.
from one day, one little snapshot of 6th grade, literally 3-hour window of one day of one, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't define them.
No.
Maybe they didn't have enough breakfast that day. Maybe their mom was sick and they were worried about their mom that day. Maybe they were just tired, or maybe, who knows what? Maybe they were sick.
Maybe the readings are too old-fashioned and they don't understand it.
I'm so tired of Aunt Jackie's ring. I mean, good Lord.
I mean, why aren't we including things in tests? And I get it. I love the classics. I do.
Well, yeah, there's a place for them,
but
you need a teacher to put it in context.
Yeah.
If you're just sending them off to read a classic on their own, we don't talk like that anymore. They're going to struggle.
Yes.
And it's not that they don't, they have trouble with comprehension. It's they have trouble comprehending the classics.
Yeah.
Much different.
Yeah. What's a spin wheel? What is what's a
Right.
cotton gin?
Right.
Yeah.
Cotton gin. Is that a flavor of Jolly Rancher? What is
Right.
Yeah, I think we gotta interest them. We got to.
Yes.
How flexible are you in the classroom with materials? Like do you have direction? Or do you have and does it depend on the administrator, or is it more of a thing where, like, let's say you have a reading lesson and the district recommends you use Miss Nelson is Missing, which I actually like that book. But let's say you're thinking, nah, you know what, this, the Paperback Princess works better for this, or something more modern, more recent, like Flat Stanley or Big Nate works. This book of version of Big Nate works better. Are you able to be more flexible with that kind of stuff?
It's a little different in middle school.
It is.
It's a little different.
Yeah, it is.
We have our curriculum, and there is a list of books the state has approved, and we really can't deviate from that.
Gotcha.
But I will say this: the list is exhaustive. If
is.
you can't find good material on that list, you're not looking, because there's lots of good stuff on there.
That's good.
So,
that's good.
Yeah.
Sometimes Virginia Beach is a little they can be a little ham-fisted, and the curriculum is a little bit, as you said, stale. Just because it won a Newberry or Caldecott doesn't mean the kids are going to do flips over it.
Yeah. No, there are lots of contemporary books on the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade literature list.
Most definitely.
Yes. And that's really so important, because especially for like my pull-out English class, my class has done so well this year because we've read things in the curriculum that they were like, wow, I never realized reading could be like this.
Right.
I've never really thought about analyzing this and talking about the stories, and
sure.
That's cool. Do you have students that are a low reading level and they end up reading books that are at a lower maturity level too? And conversely, students that are high reading level, but maybe the books are a little too high for them from a content level.
I think that's the eternal struggle, because there are obviously, and I would say across the board, we see reading gaps because I say COVID. I think COVID hurt that, pushed that along. But the problem when they get to in elementary school, it's not such a problem, right? Because when you do guided reading and it's kind of more age appropriate. But when you get to middle school, if there are, in the cases there are severe reading deficiencies, like you just said, you don't want to read something that's geared towards 9-10-year-olds,
Yeah.
So I think the key in that, and what I've done, is finding ways to make it accessible to them. For instance, I record myself reading the text that we're reading, and I upload that audio file to our online school platform, so that
cool.
It's an audiobook.
Right.
How's that any different than listening to an audiobook?
Right.
While that does not address the reading deficiencies, the main thing is the student is then able to access comprehension. They're able to access all those the analysis, all those things that were previously inaccessible to them because they just couldn't actually read it themselves. They can now do those things.
I think that's tremendous, because if your teaching focus is on character traits or setting or plot, then that's what you focus on. I have no problem with them listening to an audiobook because we're focused on the discussion. Because you're going, if they're a low reader, they're likely still going to be getting your word study practice separately from that. And one of my biggest frustrations with teaching reading is where, like, in the curriculum would have, like, this is the rubric that the kids are going to have to follow, and you need to share the rubric with the kids, and it's written at this, like, high school level. Okay, now I'm gonna spell cat. It's like after like we did this, presented this science project where the kids had to look at the rubric and come up with their thing. And this rubric is like this comprehensive thing. And then we're like, okay, now we're going to go into reading. Okay, now CAT spells cat. And I think it's kind of, I don't know if there's a disconnect or what, but I think that's tremendous.
Yeah. And I've not been as successful as I would like to have at times, but I've also found ways to work in small group guided reading to help address some of those reading deficiencies,
Where do you think is more important? And maybe it's different in middle school, because by the time they get to middle school, let me ask this question first. When they come to middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, where should they be reading wise at that point?
That's really, well, you could talk about with the 8th graders. When they first come in 6th grade, I would love if every student was at least and I'm talking entering 6th grade. If the deficiency was no lower than, say, 3rd to 4th grade, that'd be a dream. Because I think that's very workable.
Sure.
At that point in time.
Sure.
Yeah.
The problem, though, is you see some students come in and they really, unfortunately, cannot read at all.
Right.
That builds off an even bigger question that I actually had earlier. I wanted to ask you, as a special education teacher, and Michelle, as you, I'm sure you've seen students with IEPs and whatnot. Do you feel like? Do you see a lot of students that they get the IEP a lot later than they probably should have? And COVID, of course, being an issue, but I found even pre-COVID that it was a struggle to, like, and this is, again, I can only speak about Virginia Beach schools, but I hear the same thing from teachers all over the country, that by the time you get an IEP in place, there's already been so much done that, like, you're playing catch up or you're doing triage at that point. Do you see that happen when they get to middle school?
Yes. Yeah, you do.
Like anecdotal notes. Like we had a teacher that in second grade teacher had stacks of anecdotal notes on this kid, was doing all these differentiations, and we're like, this child needs services, blah. The mom was like freaking out, and they got it to the end of the year, got into the IP meeting, and the synopsis was, well, we'll see how he does in third grade.
Right.
And it's like, what?
Right.
You know, I feel like I have a different perspective because I used to work in an elementary school. This is my first year working in a middle school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I worked in an elementary school and I taught students with special needs, I feel like there was no stigmatization of that. The kids were always accepting and wanted to help, but it feels like suddenly, you know what I'm saying? It feels like in middle school, the kids suddenly, some kids are insecure about, you know, the fact that
The label.
the label of being special needs.
They don't want to be labeled.
So I feel like some of my struggles this year have been trying to get kids to understand there's nothing wrong with getting help you need.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Well, we shout that to adults too. I think the adults in this world need to, hey, you need help. The other podcast I do is on mental health, and just being aware of mental health. You know, from the days where talking about mental health was such a taboo or a weakness, and now we're a lot more open about it. But it's crazy how people don't want to reach. They feel like it's makes them inferior to reach out for help.
Right. And I wish that wasn't the case. And I've told kids that so often, and they ask me questions like, Mr. Talbot, were you a special education student? And I tell them, you know, I was very lucky. School came easy for me. And they asked me, well, why are you here? I said, I'm here to help you. I want to help you.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm trying to share what I know and you know, maybe impart some of the techniques that I used in school that might help you.
But middle school's a difficult time. They don't want to be different.
No.
And by being put in a special class, that singles them out, makes them feel different, which automatically puts them on guard. It's like they have the chip on their shoulder, and they're more likely to get into fights, and they're more likely to, you know, feel down on themselves and sometimes become depressed because they're upset about where they are. They don't realize that this is going to be something that ultimately will be good for them.
Yeah. They don't realize they don't see it like it's a coaching thing.
Right.
They need to, like, hey, it's like rehabilitating a muscle rather than they see it as, oh, you're going to go to you're going to the dummy room.
Yes.
And I'm sure their peers make that even worse.
Oh, I'm sure.
And the other thing, I'm sure you've seen this in Virginia Beach. It seems like we're encountering more and more incidents of this kind of goes back to state testing. You know, lots of states across the United States say, oh, well, scores aren't where we want them to be and whatnot. But I think we're seeing more and more students facing adversity at home. I mean, they come to school hungry. They come to school because they have difficult home lives or you know, or different traumas that they've gone through. Well, how are you supposed to write a persuasive essay on a state test when you're thinking about that stuff?
Sure.
I mean, I don't think we talk about that sometimes.
Right.
Big time. Like how much gets, and that's why I always try to, I've always tried to present things in a way like, in school there's this, but because the kids, when they go home, a lot of times a lot of the interventions you put in, or a lot of the behavior interventions that you put in, good luck if they get reinforced at home. In fact, the opposite might get reinforced at home. You might have a student that their mind isn't on, you know, fractions. Their mind is on, what are they going to have for dinner? How are they going to get dinner tonight?
Right.
Are they gonna, or is it going to be, you know, are they going to starve? And I think that's definitely something that needs to be needs to be looked at is
Yes.
what's and addressed too. And I also feel like too that I feel like we need to shift. And again, I don't, if I had the answer, I'd be chairman of this education board or whatever. But I like shifting the focus on student growth rather than a standard. Granted, I think standards are good from a data standpoint. But I always would tell the kids, I don't want you to compare yourself to anybody else in the room except who you were yesterday.
Yes.
And
Sure.
I know there's been a shift. Do you see a shift in the education climate towards that, or do you wish there was more of one?
I wish there was more of one. There's this story that Michelle and I talk about a lot. Think of it. We like to think of this. Will sound weird, but think of kids like popcorn. Okay, when you pop popcorn, all the kernels go in the same heat, right?
Yep, but
they all go in the same oil.
Mm-hmm.
But do they all pop at the same time?
Nope.
No, but do eventually they all pop?
Yes.
Yes.
But if you keep them all in the same pot, the ones that popped early are going to burn out.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sure.
Great analogy. But I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the truth, though. That's why, you can't say, oh, my child hasn't done this yet. And I say that as I'm a teacher, but as a parent myself, I am guilty of doing this to my own son when he was younger, thinking, okay, he hasn't talked yet. Okay, he doesn't write yet. Right now, he recognizes all his letters, but he's not, quote unquote, traditional reading yet. Yeah. He reads certain words, but he won't sit down and read like a sentence, right? Mm-hmm. But so I fall prey to the same stuff, Aaron. So circling back to, what about the parents who aren't teachers? I mean, what are they going through? You know what I mean? So but as humans, don't we naturally compare? And someone could tell you, oh, don't do that. I just said that, but it's a struggle. It's a journey. It's not something you can just, you know what I mean?
Well, you can't help it. I constantly compare myself to George Clooney, and I know I'm more handsome than he is, but anyways, but no, we naturally compare ourselves, just like teachers compare ourselves. One of the things that, I think sometimes teachers struggle with is, that's why it's so important to build trust on a teaching team and in the building, and the administrators set that tone is that, that you're working together and sharing ideas. But I've found situations where, one teacher's doing something really, and other teachers would get jealous of that.
I think my phone's going to die.
I think it is.
You keep chopping up. I think my phone's going to die.
Uh-oh. All right. Well, we can wrap it. We can definitely wrap this up, but this has been fantastic. I feel like, and I'd love to have you both on again.
Yes, definitely.
I think this, in fact, I'm actually, looking at having a panel coming up, maybe towards the end of the year when we're all a little bit well rested, having a panel on special needs and special education. That special needs might be something that we look at differently. So anyways, thank you so much, Ronnie and Michelle Talbott, for joining me on this Educators podcast. For Ronnie and Michelle, and for Thor, the God of Thunder, who's protecting the realm of Roblox. This is Mr. Burden, a.k.a. Ron. Thank you for joining us for the Educators podcast. I'll sign off for now, and we'll see you next week. And have good luck. We're almost there. Catch full episodes of the Educators podcast every Thursday at 4 p.m. Real educators with the real issues in education. Thank you so much for watching. And, of course, take care of yourself. Jeans passes to anyone who likes, shares, and comments on this video. Have a great week.